Well, welcome to That Bible Guy. It's so good to have you with me today on our new series on evidences for God. I wasn't here yesterday. I said I'd be in Monday or Tuesday. I wasn't in yesterday, plain and simply because it was just so warm. It was so hot in here, this little summer shed that I'm in. It was so hot. I realized that I've got to start earlier in the day. And even now, I'm still very warm. It's a nice problem to have. But before I get into the evidences that I talked about doing today, just a quick positive update on the good news, things that are continuing to happen within my ministry, which I'm very excited about. Yesterday, just on my website, I had views from people around the world at Austria, UK, Ireland, Finland, South Africa, China, and USA yesterday, the ones that I could see. So it was so exciting to see people tuning in from around the world. I welcome you if you are tuning in from anywhere outside of the UK. It's so good to have you here with me and hearing God's word. And please appreciate to subscribe, like, comment, and join in and interact, and we can all learn together. Just also want to encourage everyone as well, and I certainly feel encouraged by this. This is an answered prayer. As you know, I set up my Patreon site in order to support me to try and get one ministry day a week as a starting point. To do that, I need about 25, 30 patrons. I set it up about almost 3 weeks ago. I've currently now got 10. So I'm probably about a third of the way there. Almost a third of the way there. Have to keep revising that slightly, but it's incredible. Thank you for your support. If you do want to support me, even just £2.50 a month, it's www.patreon.com/thatbibleguy. The lowest amount you can pledge is £2.50 per month or £4 a month, and it's in dollars, so it's slightly less. Any support is appreciated and will help me get to that point where I can do so much more for God and reaching out to people, getting God's word out there, which is the goal. So today, excuse me, it's very warm in here today, as I said already. But today what we're going to do, as I said already, was look at evidences for God. I said already that, I mentioned this yesterday, acronym is based on faith. It's a memorable acronym, F.A.I.T.H, in order to help us remember it, in order to engage in conversation, so that we'll remember, to some extent, the evidences which support our beliefs in our incredible God. So just to say to begin with, faith is often seen as a non-rational belief that's based on no evidence. And I don't really like this because it's not really the case. It's not really what it was originally meant. The Latin word fides in the Bible, to mean faith, fides, I may be saying that wrong, the Latin word often implied it was close to our word for trust. It had a broader meaning than just a belief. It also implied trust as well, which, as we know, trust is firmly based on evidence of an experience with someone, where you engage with someone, you know how they've been over the years, what they've said or what they've done, and the evidence of their character enables you to trust in them. Well, that was a little bit what this was meant by faith. So when we say faith, it's not an irrational belief, as the non-rational belief as the world sees it. It actually is based on evidence. So that's where I've linked the two together. Faith, it's unforgettable. It should help us remember the evidences for God. Have you ever been stumped in a conversation? Someone asks you to explain the reason for your faith in God, for your belief, and then they fire something back and you don't know what to say. On a bus, on a train, on the street, at home in the family, Christmas dinner, online at the moment, and people mock your belief, because it is mocked, and you don't know what to say. I've been there. I remember years ago, before I get into all what I do now, I would hear many people throwing out differences of opinion. My way of dealing with it then was to change the subject, or to repeat the mantra I'd started with, just repeating the same phrase again. In other words, just ignoring what they said. Now that's not good at all. And what ended up happening for me, and you may have found this yourself, was you leave that conversation and you go away and little doubts start to niggle in your head, because you weren't honourable to what they had said. If they said something that needs dealt with, what do we need to deal with in terms of opposition and the viewpoints that the world has? My view on this, deal with what you hear. We have to be able to deal with what we hear, because otherwise our mind starts to throw in questions that we don't have answers for. Do we need every question answered? Definitely not. But for me, deal with what you hear. When you hear something that sounds reasonable or valid, or that requires an explanation, then that's the thing we should deal with. But what we're going to look at today is faith, the first part of this faith acronym. The 7 evidences, 5, there's 3 in the last one. This is the first one. F, first cause. First cause stands for cosmological argument. We're looking at the world of cosmology, and I'm going to say today that based on the evidence of cosmology, that would strongly indicate that there's a designer behind this universe. I'm going to state 4 principles, 4 points today. Some of them lend towards the other one before. I'll explain that in a moment, but there's 4 points today which I want us to take in. We don't need to remember all these specifically or this deductive argument necessarily, but it's all to show you that the design and the existence of our universe points strongly towards a designer. So, first one, whatever begins to exist requires a cause. This sounds pretty obvious to us. Look at the terminology to begin with. We're saying here it's whatever begins to exist, not just whatever exists, because then that doesn't include God. Begins to exist, that excludes God. So it's whatever begins to exist requires a cause. All physical matter requires an explanation. If you ever found something on a beach or on a walkway, and you found something, and you were to say to someone, it just happens to be there. There's no reason for it being there. No reason for its existence. No one would accept that. It's not an acceptable answer, because we would deal in the world of proven science. We deal in the world of cause and effect. All physical matter, regardless of its shape or size, requires explanation. The more complicated and technical it gets, then the more you feel it requires explanation, although it all requires explanation, but the more complicated it gets, the more it requires explanation. Paley's watchmaker analogy, which when you find a watch, it's very technical and detailed, lots of little component parts that rely upon each other. It requires an explanation. Everything we know in the world is contingent. In other words, it requires an explanation outside of itself. It's something outside of itself that caused it to be. We know of nothing that's not contingent, and it exists necessarily in and of itself and wasn't created by anything outside of itself. All sounds pretty straightforward, but this is the first principle, which is whatever begins to exist requires a cause. If you increase the size of the object that exists, it doesn't change the need for an explanation. So you move from a beach ball to the size of our Earth, to our universe, it still requires an explanation. The need for an explanation for its existence still remains, and the most likely explanation is its existence was caused. Whatever begins to exist requires a cause. Second point. So whatever begins to exist requires a cause. The second point is the universe began to exist. Now I'm stating this and you say, well, yeah, of course it did. This wasn't always the belief. Up until like the 1800s, everyone believed, well, most people believed the universe was eternal. Has always been here. Did not come into existence. The idea that the universe came into existence was frowned upon. Arthur Eddington said, the notion of a beginning is repugnant to me. I simply do not believe that the present order of things started off with a bang. The expanding universe is preposterous, because the expanding universe would have shown that the universe did come into existence at some point in time. It cannot have been expanding forever, eternally. Albert Einstein said the idea of a beginning of the universe, that it wasn't eternal, the idea is annoying. Now, why do people say this? Because if you move from an eternal universe that's always been here to one that came into existence, well, what brought it into existence? The eternal universe has no need for a God, but a universe that came into being requires an explanation. So the universe was shown to have had a beginning to its existence. Different discoveries caused a rethink. In the 1920s, the expanding universe was shown by the redshift. So it was the light between distant galaxies was redder than you would expect, showing that the galaxies were moving away further and further from one another, showing that the universe was expanding. As I say, it can't be expanding forever. So it showed that the universe at some point was a singularity, was a little point, and it grew from that. It was an expanding universe. That was 1920. 1965, when it started to be accepted more, and hence came the Big Bang Theory, was that you also found cosmic background radiation. So this is the whole idea of the theory of heat death, and if it had been here forever, the system would have wound down by now. That's consistent with the second law of thermodynamics. So this, and there are other theories out there, which again all support something that's just widely accepted today, was that the universe came into existence, and hence came about the Big Bang. So it could not be denied any longer that the universe, as I say, second point, was that it began to exist. The Big Bang doesn't solve the problem, and for years I didn't like the sound of Big Bang. It sounded anti-God, but now I happily accept the idea of the Big Bang. The Big Bang needs a Big Banger. It needs someone to get it started. It doesn't solve the problem though, because the Big Bang requires an explanation. So that's the second point. Whatever begins to exist requires a cause. The second point is the universe began to exist. The third point then is therefore the universe was caused. It follows naturally from the first two premises in this case. So whatever began to exist requires a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe was caused. Pretty straightforward. It follows from the first two. The universe was caused. And again, this all sounds pretty obvious so far. I will be dealing with in my second class on Thursday for my patrons. I will be dealing with the objections to some of these, and again, I'll come back to that in a moment. But the fourth point then, so just to be clear and thorough so we can get these in our head, whatever begins to exist requires a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe was caused. Last thing, the best explanation for this cause is God. The best explanation. So we need an explanation. We need a causation. We need something that enabled the universe to come into existence. So, given that it was caused, what is the best explanation? So let me just state already as well again, I always like to say this. Each of the evidences on the F.A.I.T.H acronym independently are not going to cause everybody to fall down and go, okay, God exists. It's a cumulative argument. And each part of the accumulate, it's inference to the best explanation. So I will always say this. What is the best explanation for the existence of our universe? Excuse me. The best thing we can do then to understand what caused something to be is to look at the universe itself. What did the Big Bang create? What was created at that point? So what are we looking at when we look at the universe? Excuse me again. We are looking at matter, space, time, and energy. They're the four things that Stephen Hawking said all came about at the beginning of the universe. Before that, absolute nothingness. Now that's a hard thing to get your head around, but I mean absolute nothingness. Not a quantum vacuum, not anything else, not tiny atoms, nothing. No space, time, energy, matter, nothing. Before the Big Bang, before the beginning of our universe. So, whatever created our universe, whatever caused the Big Bang, if you like, and it doesn't really matter if you believe in the Big Bang theory or not, it just means that the universe came into existence at some point, somehow. It's caused by something. We know it's caused by God. But why do we say the best explanation is God? Well, as I say, whatever caused the universe, created the universe, was something outside of the universe. Sounds pretty plausible. The universe cannot create itself. That's completely illogical to suggest that space, matter, time, and energy all created itself. It has begun to exist by that. That makes no sense. It cannot be something in the universe. It's something outside of the universe. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it's spaceless. Space came into existence at the time of the Big Bang, at the beginning of the universe. So space is something that's spaceless, because space didn't exist before this point in time. So we've got, it was something outside the universe, it was spaceless. It was also timeless, because time began to exist. Time's just a construct that humans have come up with. But the idea of mathematical and natural laws governing the seasons mean that whatever it was is also timeless, because it was outside of time before time began. So outside the universe, spaceless, timeless, it was immaterial, because matter came about at the beginning of the universe. It didn't exist prior to that. So outside the universe, spaceless, timeless, immaterial, and we'll get back to this one in a minute, is also very powerful. Whatever it was that created the universe is very powerful. We look at the complexity, the sun, the power, the stars, the vastness of the whole thing compared to us. It's clearly, from our vantage point, very, very powerful. The other thing, and again, we're going to come back to this in my other episode on Thursday, is it's uncaused. So outside the universe, spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful. The other thing it is uncaused. Now, I'll come back to this because this is something that people then say, well, then who created God? And I will come back to that and talk about that on the Thursday session. But whatever it was that created the universe itself was uncaused. And again, I'll deal with the objections to that. It cannot be something that was caused itself to then cause the universe. There are good answers to this. When people say, well, who created God? There is good answers to that, which I'll talk about on Thursday. But again, it's uncaused. The other one, I would say, in terms of what created the universe, it was something that was purposeful and personal. We look around at the universe, we all ask the existential questions of purpose, meaning and value. We see colors, we get nice smells, we have memories. The world is incredibly well created in a way that it feeds our imagination, that it makes us dream, it makes us excited and laugh and cry. Music. How could you ever hear a wonderful, concert and say that the world's not designed with some type of purpose in mind? The idea that we feel hunger and we go and we need to eat, the idea that we enjoy pleasure and many other things in our life indicate that the world has a purpose. It clearly has a purpose. No one lives without purpose. If they do, they probably don't live very long. So what we can say about the cause of the universe was it was something outside the universe. It was spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, uncaused itself, purposeful, and also personal. So these are the attributes that we can say, all these things begun at the point of the universe. They didn't exist before the universe existed, from our calculations and our science. So it's something that displays all them attributes. If somebody wants to tell me that it's something other than God, you're probably going to be describing God anyway, to be perfectly honest. So what's the best explanation? The best explanation is God, an intelligent designer. At this point, let's just limit what our evidence says. We're not saying anything about Jesus right now. We're not talking about the Christian God right now. What we're talking about is there's an intelligent mind behind the existence of the universe. A couple of scriptures on that. Ones as Christians we well know. Psalm 19, talk very much about this. Psalm 19 definitely is very, very hot in here today. I think it's reading about 23 degrees or something. Many of you who live in parts of the world are probably sitting at 30 plus at the moment, wondering why I'm so warm. But Psalm 19, an incredible psalm. It tells us what we already know, and it defines and describes why we have the universe. We know that for years Genesis has said, in the beginning. Through all the time that people denied that the universe wasn't eternal and that it came into existence, people denied that. All through them years, the Bible still said, in the beginning, God. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech, they use no words. No sound is heard from them, yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. And the heavens God has pitched a tent for the sun, and so on. So it displays knowledge. What we look at, that we see from birth from a very young age, is a designed and created a purposeful universe, which is powerful, majestic, and beautiful. We also know as well, just quickly to share in Romans 1, in verse 18, that the wrath of God has been revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. It says in verse 20, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people were without excuse. We can understand God, we can see God, we can have a faith in God because of what he has made. People are without excuse because the fundamental building blocks, the basics of science, if you like, when we look around and see a world that is clearly designed and created, indicate that something powerful and outside of the universe caused this to be. That is, as I say today, in cosmological argument, the best explanation for the designed world that we see. So just to say today, the best explanation of first cause, the beginning of the universe, is an intelligent designer. As I say, this is not a knockdown argument. It'll be a cumulative argument. Each one will build on the last. But first cause, whatever begins to exist requires a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe was caused. The best explanation for that cause is God. The best explanation for the world that we see around us is God. The scriptures have been telling us that for years. We can read that again in Romans 1 verse 18 and Psalm 19. So I hope we can grasp that today. This is first cause, cosmological argument. I'll have some of this written down so you can follow along just to remind yourself. This is easy to remember. You might not remember all the information I've given us today or all them points just the way they are, but the best explanation for the existence of the universe for first cause is God. The best explanation for everything else will also be God. They all build on another. Now, I know there's objections, and I know that it can be difficult to talk about this stuff in a way that builds faith in other people. That's what my Thursday show is going to be about. It's going to be looking at the objections, of which there are answers to them. I know there's two viewpoints, so we're going to be looking at the objections and dealing with the practicals of how do I use this, Simon? How do I get into dialogue about this? Even in a way that you don't have to be an expert, because I'm not an expert in this stuff at all. I'm no cosmologist at all. I just love this stuff because it obviously supports our position as theists, as believers in God, and subsequently believers in Jesus. So please drop any comments you have or questions you have about this, other thoughts you have on this. As I say, I'll be back for my patrons on Thursday to deal with the objections and the practicals. If you can sign up, brilliant. If you can't, I will give you little snippets of that along the way as well. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We're going to keep getting this word out there. We're going to get into more conversations with people to present this evidence to them that can help convince people that God is there and he's reaching out to all of us in incredible ways. Thanks for joining us today. Let's get his word out there. Amen.